Bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again. Thank you for joining us. As we begin our meeting today, and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on the unceded Anishinaabe-Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. I'll now ask the committee coordinator to please do the roll call.
Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Dudas.
Easy.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Rockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Giroux.
Here.
Vice Chair Kitts.
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
You have quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, confirmation of minutes from the December 5th meeting and the joint meeting of Finance and Planning on the 2nd and 3rd of November. Are the minutes confirmed? Okay, moving to item 4.1, the Community Partners Insurance Program. I wanted to start by, I know that Vice Chair Kitts has a motion, but I wanted to start by asking David White to just give an update on the process and how we got to this point. So if you could do that, and then we'll hear from Vice Chair Kitts, and then we'll hear the delegations. Go ahead.
Certainly, Mayor. Following the November FinCorp meeting, staff engaged a number of groups. They engaged directly with the Federation of Citizens Associations, given their significant interest in it. There were also sessions held with a number of kind of ward-based community associations, and staff also opened it up, kind of 2 open sessions through a professional facilitator, and had 2 moderated sessions, one afternoon, one evening, to gauge the interest in the community and to explore some of the kind of the fundamental elements of what a revised Community Partners Insurance Program might look like. And so as part of that, the aim was to kind of get some feedback on what they considered to be kind of the fundamental elements of a revised CIPP, some overall program options, but also even at a more fundamental level to discuss what the mandate of a revised CPIP would be, and appreciating that the program has really existed without any kind of clear mandate since 2001. And what we kind of gleaned from that, and in terms of program options, like one of the first fundamental questions put to groups was, should the city be providing insurance or should the city be providing funding? Appreciating that recognizes a balance between the convenience to groups of having the city procure and purchase insurance and provide it to them, but balanced against the flexibility of having groups able to kind of design their own insurance package, deductibles and things like that, but also concerns around sustainability, in that the concerns around kind of industry support for the CPIP, given the evolution and kind of the state of the insurance market that we see today, that risk remains, and that's still an issue. And what came out of that was a clear preference that, given the sophistication of the city, given the city's perceived buying power in terms of procuring and sourcing insurance, and the convenience of identifying what an appropriate package would be, groups expressed a clear preference that the city continue in the same vein of the CPIP as it exists today, that the city procure it and that the city not look at a funding model where the city would open funding available to groups that through which they could procure their own. In terms of some of the other elements, groups were asked, for example, about mandate. what should the mandate of a revised CPIP be? And again, a clear preference was shown for a program that focused on supporting community groups and operating at the neighborhood level to provide programming, seasonal events to their communities. Certainly, those who attended, and I simply note in that regard, just the level of interest, we had, I think, more than 80 to 100 attendees in each of those sessions. What we heard really was that, the values that sports groups, leisure groups, those other groups that are, some of which are currently caught by the CPIP, tremendous value to the community, but that the existing programs in, for example, the community funding framework, the civic events funding that the city provides, that they would be able to avail themselves of those kinds of programs and that sources of funding, but that the focus really should be on community events at the neighborhood level. And in terms of kind of eligibility criteria, again, it was kind of an open-ended question around what are kind of appropriate buckets or appropriate categories. And I think it's fair to say that there was a kind of a community of interest, for want of a better term, certainly between the city and some of the matters that have been raised and attendees. And I would characterize them kind of in three categories, kind of as charity, not officially charity, but that they should be operating as not-for-profit organizations, that there were kind of concerns or a recognition that groups should demonstrate legitimacy, and that through good governance practices, through having a democratic elected board, having meetings open to residents. So, those kinds of factors were seen as reasonable and necessary elements of any kind of revised CPIP. And viability, that of course, that they be in good standing with the city. And so I think there was I'd say a general consensus that those were considered reasonable, appropriate. There were concerns expressed if the city, for example, was going to require incorporation, that was unduly onerous or burdensome on groups who were focused more on not issues of governance, but on delivering events at the community level. And so that's what we heard from those those numbers of groups, those numerous groups. There was also some expression of interest around kind of an expansion of the program to include things like accidental death and dismemberment insurance for volunteers. The only thing, and that stems from an extension of that kind of employment benefit through the community rink program. I think from a staff standpoint, there would be a significant administration both on the part of the city, but also on the part of the groups to maintain a roster of any volunteer that might be engaged in any particular event. And clearly an additional cost that's doesn't form part of kind of the overall bucket that the CPIP works in today. And appreciating that that's I look to Mr. Chenier to my right, that's a program cost that has never really formed part of the CPIP. And the last kind of as a closing comment, there was some kind of limited discussion of other types of insurance, appreciating that the CPIP has always been focused on commercial general liability insurance and the question of directors and officers liability. And in that, I think, the only thing I would say is that, directors and officers liability is a very specialized type of insurance. Whether there was a true need for it, given the nature of the work that community groups are doing, and the scope of that kind of insurance. And again, just from the context of the envelope that the CPIP works in, directors and officers has always been available as an add-on, but it's never formed part of what the city contributes in terms of its support to community groups. So that's kind of in sum, I'm just kind of restating what I sent around last week, but that's what we've heard from the community. And more than anything, I'd like to thank the community for just their engagement on this. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask Vice Chair Kitts now to introduce her motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's very long, so I apologize in advance, but we had a lot to cover. Whereas the Finance and Corporate Services Committee at its meeting on November 7th, 2023, considered the staff report entitled Community Partners Insurance Program, and whereas the report recommended, in part, that the existing Community Partners Insurance Program be discontinued and that funding for the existing Community Partner Insurance Program be reallocated to programs comprising the city's community funding framework, including the civic events funding administered by the Community and Social Services Department, and whereas the city will continue to provide coverage to nonprofit organizations with a formal city agreement in place that manage facility access, maintain and supervise outdoor rinks, community gardens, and/or support the operation and delivery of affordable and accessible recreational opportunities to the community on behalf of the city. And whereas the recommendations contained in the report sought to address concerns raised regarding the two-tiered nature of the existing CPIP, in which a limited group of community organizations receive city-paid commercial and general liability insurance, while others are required to fund their own premiums, and to respond to the committee's direction issued at its September 5th, 2023 meeting. And whereas the committee voted to defer consideration of the report so that staff could undertake more consultation with community groups potentially affected by the proposed changes to the CPIP. And whereas a number of engagement sessions have since been held with affected community groups in which they were provided with an opportunity to express their views on what the appropriate structure and objective of the CPIP should be, as well as on what types of eligibility criteria would be considered reasonable that would meet the city's interest in ensuring the groups participating in a revised CPIP meet the intent to provide municipal support to community neighborhood animation and programming, and which would not be unduly onerous for the volunteers supporting these community groups or staff administering the program. And whereas most participants in the engagement sessions expressed a clear preference for a CPIP that would support community groups that organize, host, and deliver community events open to the general public at the neighborhood level by providing city-sourced and paid CGL insurance. And whereas there was a clear consensus that the city should establish eligibility criteria that would ensure groups follow certain minimum governance standards, including such things as having a democratically elected board, having bylaws or a constitution, preparing annual financial statements, and hosting an annual general meeting open to residents. And whereas the need to establish the terms of a new CPIP, including definitions of qualifying groups, reasonable eligibility criteria, and an application process means that a revised CPIP may not be ready for implementation prior to the renewal date for the 2024-2025 term. And whereas some groups participating in the current CPIP may not be eligible for the new CPIP and will need time to secure their own insurance and to identify sources of financial support, including through the city's community funding framework. And whereas the implementation of a revised CPIP should not impose an additional burden on taxpayers, and whereas the possibility that the insurance industry might in the future decline to offer the insurance necessary to support the CPIP remains a concern, and that groups relying on city support for their insurance needs should not be continuously at risk due to the possibility of cancellation of the CPIP. Therefore, be it resolved that staff be directed to implement a revised CPIP based on the following. The city will continue to procure commercial general liability insurance on behalf of groups eligible to participate in the program. The program will be directed at supporting traditional community associations groups whose primary mandate is representing a neighborhood on a broad range of civic matters, and that is recognized for organizing, hosting, and the direct delivery of community events, activities, and programs open to the general public at the neighborhood level. That the definition of neighborhoods be informed by the Ottawa Neighborhood Study, as well as available community resources, association constitutions, and other community resources that can validate community representation. Participating community associations/groups will be required to meet certain legitimacy/eligibility criteria, including the following. Operate within the City of Ottawa as a not-for-profit group and have been in existence for at least 2 years, and demonstrate financial viability and be in good standing with the City of Ottawa, and be governed by a democratically elected board of directors or committee of at least 3 independent and unrelated members, and demonstrate good governance practices by holding an annual general meeting, have a board-approved constitution or bylaws, hold meetings open to residents in their neighborhood, produce annual financial statements, and have measures in place to ensure that they do not at any time sponsor or produce any materials that promote or oppose the candidacy of a person for elected office, or that promote or oppose a campaign related to a question on the ballot in accordance with the city's election-related resources policy. Be it further resolved that the revised CPIP be in place on or before January 1st, 2025, so that the program can be accounted for as part of the city's 2025 budget, and be it further resolved that the CPIP be renewed in its current form for the 2024-2025 period to allow groups that will no longer be eligible sufficient time to either secure alternate insurance coverage or sources of funding, including through the city's community funding framework. And be it further resolved that staff explore the possibility that in the renewal of the CPIP in its current form of a prorated policy for the period of June 1st, 2024 to January 1st, 2025, to help community participants bridge the transition period between programs. And be it further resolved that the General Manager, Recreation, Cultural and Facilities Services Department review staffing requirements to implement and maintain the revised CPIP program, including intake screening, ongoing evaluation and compliance with participant eligibility, and including a broader City of Ottawa community liaison and support role on matters relating to governance and access to city key contacts, information, and resources. The findings of this review will be reported back to Council by way of memo in anticipation of the 2025 budget. And be it further resolved that in the event that staff are unable to procure the insurance necessary to support the program, the funding dedicated to the CPIP be reallocated to a separate community insurance support funding program within the community funding framework available to fund or reimburse third-party liability insurance to the same category of community associations/groups, and based on the same legitimacy eligibility criteria as the CPIP. And finally, be it further resolved, staff conduct a comprehensive review as outlined in point 3 of the report before January 1st, 2025 of the terms of the city's civic events funding and similar community engagement programs on contractual service delivery agreements to minimize the city-imposed insurance burden on community organizations without exposing the city to unreasonable risk.
Okay. I think that's some kind of record. I had that at
Jeez.
about 6 minutes and 50 seconds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to speak to that?
Sure. I'm sure no one wants to hear me speak further, but I'll very quickly. So I was elected on October 5th, 2020, and the first email I got alerting me to this issue was November 27th, 2020. So I've been working on this for a long time. I know many people have, and it took a while, probably too long. But I do think what's in front of us is a very good compromise that balances concerns of community associations with the feasibility and longevity of the program, and really strives to make it more equitable. In wards like mine, we have community associations that were grandfathered because they were pre-amalgamation and were receiving this coverage, and community associations that were not. And so what I brought forward in November was sort of a very rough draft, striving to create a criteria for which we could define community associations. And I think we've landed in a better place here. So there was a number of councillors that have been engaged on this. I think, it proves how much we care about this issue. Councillor Johnson, thank you for your help with this. But there was many that provided input and feedback. And I think we did our jobs on this one. We said we need better community consultation, and that's what we got, over 100 participants and really meaningful input that informed what's in front of us today. So, I came with my boxing gloves on to the last meeting, but I want to thank staff. I want to thank David White, Dan Chenier, Wendy Stephenson, and I have to thank Heather in my office, who's been working on this as long as I have, and her input was instrumental in this final version. But most of all, I want to thank the volunteers of these community associations for all the work that you do, and I hope that this motion and how invested your councillors have been in it demonstrates how valued you are, and that we really appreciate the programming you deliver in your communities and everything you do to make your neighborhoods better. So thanks very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Vice Chair Kitts. Let's turn to the delegations now. And first on the list is Alex Cullen from the Federation of Citizens Associations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, members of council, for this opportunity. I think I've been engaged in this issue now before Committee of Council for some 2 years. I think this is my 5th or 6th presentation before a committee on this issue. And I can tell you that I believe we're making progress. It's not a perfect motion that we have here, but it's a step forward. I want to start off by thanking staff for the 2 public consultation sessions they did on January 17 and January 25. January 17 was a daytime meeting, attracted 140 participants. January 25 was an evening meeting that attracted 52 participants. I think the review that Mr. White gave was a very good one. I understood he did produce a memo to all members of council relaying what happened at those things. It's unfortunate that that was not shared with the participants. That would have been a very helpful, useful thing to do, but it was not. And I would say in future, when you have what we heard reports, that they are circulated. Secondly, we have the motion that Councillor Kitts has just run through. It's a 4-page motion with 10 moving parts, 10 different sections under the therefore be it resolved. And that became available to councillors late yesterday afternoon and was not shared with the 160 groups that participated in the consultation process. So this is difficult to make amendments to try and perfect something on the floor of a committee where communities have not seen this. There are elements here that come as a complete surprise. So I'll just go through a couple of things just to finish off. For example, just a small thing, under the eligibility criteria, we had the presentation from city staff on the 17th and the 25th. There was no mention of the requirement for annual financial statements. Now, mind you, at an AGM, they happen as a matter of course. But this comes out of the sky. It's not fatal, but it certainly surprises. The second element is requiring a democratic elected board of governors, yes, directors, absolutely, 3 independent unrelated members. Where does that come from? Why is that there? Why is this being presented without any consultation with the communities that are engaged? Is there a problem here? We're not aware of it. But I think the biggest thing, and one other element before I get to the biggest thing, have measures in place so that at any time they do not sponsor materials, promote or oppose a candidacy. I can tell you that no community, so there would be a civil war within a community association should it decide to endorse a candidate. It has not been done. This was not part of the discussion. It's unnecessary, superfluous, and quite frankly, paternalistic. But I can tell you right off the bat, I mean, put it in place, but community associations have to pass a motion is very paternalistic. But the last thing I want to touch on, the most important thing that I think should be removed from this motion is the second last, therefore be it resolved. That's plan B. That says if this all fails, then you're going to go to a system that we've all said we don't want. And I would say to you, you don't need this now. If indeed the city is not able to find the insurance, you want staff to come back with a report and allow the community to comment on it. May I remind you that you have over 200 community rinks getting insurance now, general liability insurance, plus accidental death and dismemberment, plus event insurance when you want to hold a winter carnival. You have 32 community gardens getting general liability insurance. You have, I don't know how many arrangements with field houses with community associations that get general liability. So telling community associations, your problem goes south. What about all the other ones? The city is always going to be able to find insurance. We know there is a market out there, but if there is indeed going to be a problem, let a report come back. Don't put in stone that we're going to try all this stuff, but if it fails, okay, it's done. That is not appropriate. So that item 9, the second last bullet there, should be out there. So, okay, I think we've made progress. And I do want to compliment Councillor Kitts and Councillor Johnson and the others who have participated in this. We are getting somewhere. And I think the basic guts of this is here, that the city we're trying to salvage something for the CPIP so that community events can continue. And yes, the community has made it very clear that they want the city to continue to provide that insurance rather than forcing them to go out as individual volunteer organizations to
Okay,
shop
that's
around
time.
when they don't have administrative capacity. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, for your time.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, let's move to the next delegation from Cheryl Parrott of the Hintonburg Community Association. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors.
Good morning.
So we do support the motion being put forward by Councillor Kitson Johnson largely. Many community associations have been trying to parse the language in this motion over the last day. And there's lots of questions of clarification that we have, and I'm hoping that the councillors in your debate will ask some of these. So it appears that this year would be a transition year till the end of December, but who's covered? Is it only the groups that were covered previously that were grandfathered, or is there any mechanism to add some of the other ones who have had to pay their own insurance? That would be very helpful. It's already February and groups are going to have to apply for their grants or are doing that now, as well as event applications. And we're looking at our event applications. Yes, we are grandfathered, but what are the other groups to do? And they really need to know where they stand. And from the emails I've seen flying around, it's not very clear. And what about those hybrid groups that have rinks, but they also run other events and activities? And this question has been asked a number of times. Or those that have agreements with the city, but also do events. So they have some type of service agreement. And one of the other questions is if you have a rink agreement, but that rink is shut down for a few years as a park is being refurbished, as happened in Mechanicsville, the Rush Park, then what happens to the other events? So this is not clear, and people do need some clarification on it. I heard the message about the accidental death and dismemberment for volunteers. It really would be helpful to have. I know that it's administratively difficult the way it's been set up for the rinks, and I would hope in the future it could be looked at as a way to get that improved so that it is available. So the community groups are all really different, and one size doesn't fit all. That's for sure. We all do different things, so the boxes are very difficult. And we hope that you'll debate some of this after the delegations. And just a few comments about the process. Man, it didn't have to be this hard. And we're still unclear on many of the aspects that I've just mentioned. The virtual sessions were very scripted with only certain questions being asked, yet the sentiment from the participants was really pretty clear. And it's been very difficult to engage with staff to have a back and forth to fine tune any of these things and make sure that the different ways that we operate as community associations have been understood. Because we think at the beginning that certainly wasn't clear, and I'm not sure it is now. We all operate so very differently and have different needs. Thank you. I hope you will debate this very thoroughly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Rosemary McKee from the Crystal Beach Community Association. Go ahead whenever you're ready. Rosemary McKee, are you ready to go?
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, good morning, Mayor and City Councilors. I'm Rosemary McKee, and I'm on the executive of the Crystal Bay Community Association. We're a small community of about 230 households, and every year we plan and host 4 events for the community. These events are held in the park or at the public river access, and they're all funded by money that we collect from the neighborhood, only $15 per household per year. They're times for neighbors to socialize and to enjoy activities for all ages. And it's time to enjoy good food that the community association provides or as a potluck. Our city councillor, Teresa Kavanaugh, attends all of our events, and she can confirm to you that they're an excellent way to foster community spirit and that it would be a shame to bring them to an end. All of our events are run by volunteers. All of the executive are volunteers. And we don't know how to find insurance for such events. And frankly, we have so many questions. What events would it cover? What events wouldn't it cover? How many people would it cover? Do we need insurance for each executive member who planned the event? How much would it cost? Our budget is really tight. So we're very worried about what will happen if the city won't continue providing insurance for this. We aren't lawyers. We can't afford one. And we don't think we're capable to find insurance that would cover us legally and appropriately. And we don't have the money for it either. So I plead with the city to continue providing insurance for groups like ours. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I see Councillor Kavanaugh has her hand up. Go ahead, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Rosemary, for making the time to come out today. I appreciate it. And yes, you do have a lot of activities, and that's what makes communities great, is getting together. Have you looked at the motion, and do you feel that it addresses your concerns or gets in the right direction?
Yes, the motion that Councillor Kitts made today is a good one because we are eligible. All of the things that she put in her eligibility list are things that we would pass. So I'm happy if Councillor Kitts, if we continue the insurance the way it is, that would be wonderful news for my group. Yes.
Okay. And you have a rink. I should clarify that you have a rink, so that's part of it.
Yeah, we have a rink, but that is separate money. It's not the money that you're talking about now for insurance. We were worried about how will we insure our 4 events that we plan. Yes, one of them is a winter party involving the rink, but the others are not.
Okay, thank you very much, Rosemary. It's helpful to have your point of view.
Good, and thank you for coming to all of them too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. We'll move next to Lynn Bankier from the Champlain Park Community Association. Lynn, are you there?
Yes, hi, sorry
Okay.
about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yes, so I'm Lynn Bankier. I'm with the Champlain Park Community Association. I have been on our board for many years, and we're one of the old community associations incorporated in 1991. I do support the direction and the intent of the motion, and I want to thank staff and councillors for working hard on our behalf. I agree that there are some clarifications that would be beneficial for us. Just to introduce our association, we do all of the traditional kind of activities, including social events. We also do beautification, planting activities, and community cleanup. So we meet the definition for the neighborhood-based community group that you're targeting the CPIP towards. And we've benefited from this insurance for many years, which I, again, am appreciative of. The clarification I did want to seek, however, is how groups that both meet the definition of the traditional neighborhood-based group and also hold contracts or things like, in our case, we do run the rinks, so I know how the transition for the rinks happened this year. away from CPIP into the city's integrated program. We also have a facility management operation for the Champlain Park Fieldhouse, which is currently under CPIP. And we understand the direction is likely to move that also into the integrated program. But what I find is that the motion is unclear with regard to whether groups that have both city operations like the field house and also run traditional activities will have then a separate arrangement for the field house, say in our case, but would also continue to be eligible for the CPIP. I seek this clarification because in the consultation presentation option 1, a bullet was groups providing community services on behalf of the city under contract are provided coverage for all activities, i.e. beyond those in the contract. This statement is not repeated in the motion, but there is a paragraph, the third whereas states, and whereas the city will continue to provide coverage to nonprofit organizations with a formal city agreement in place, for example, facility management. So I just want to confirm the intent is inherent in this motion that groups like ours would continue to be eligible for the CPIP for our non-contracted activities. And that this isn't overlooked. That's the main clarification I seek today. And so I would appreciate that staff address the intent of coverage for kind of dual operation groups such as ours, and B, that it is ensured that the wording of the motion is clear in this regard. So that I would hope someone could speak to that today. And the only other thing, because I don't want to repeat the reasons the groups prefer this option 1 from the slide presentation, I don't want it to be underestimated, the value of city expertise and also the time savings for volunteers to have the city source the insurance and formulate policies. In our case, when we apply for things like the Community Environmental Program grant, I have no problem matching the insurance requirement in those contracts, the city grant contracts, with my insurance policy, because those policies state that the city is an additional insured and provide the correct amount of liability that is required by the contract. So these kinds of matchups between the city policy and the city contracts for grants are important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Thank you very much for the delegation today. I do intend to ask city staff with respect to sort of those dual operation groups, just to help me be clear with our questions. The Champlain Park Community Association books the field house, and that is an activity that would, we think, continue to be insured. You operate the outdoor rink at Champlain Park, which will continue to be insured. What are the kinds of activities that Champlain Park Community Association runs where you are concerned that it would not be covered under either the field house or the rink operations?
Okay, well, we do a variety of social events. We have a Halloween fun run, a winter carnival that's not on the rink. It's in our field house and park. Those are examples. We've done dedication ceremonies for tree planting in memoriam of one of our leaders who passed away recently. We also do what I would call beautification activities. We participate in the park cleanup under the auspices of the city. We're fortunate to live bordering the NCC properties, and our environment team is very active in planting and improving the properties so that they're an absolute beautiful border that not just our community, but many communities enjoy, because of course people ski along there. They rent our
Sorry, Lynn,
field
if I
house.
could just
Yeah.
get you back on
Yeah.
sort of those activities that are examples
Right.
of what you would need covered. Is that the
Okay, it's the
list then?
social and the planting activities.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Leeper. Thank you, Lynn, for your presentation. We'll go next to Kate Veyneau from the Community Gardening Network. Go ahead whenever you're ready. Just make sure to turn on your camera and your microphone, please.
Hi all, my name is Kate and I'm the Community Gardening Network Coordinator at Just Food. I'm speaking today to highlight the concerns we have with the proposed changes to the Community Partners Insurance Program. Community gardens of all models within the Community Gardening Network have been included in the Free City Insurance Program since 2004, for many years now supported within CPIP. So it's been concerning to us to see that they're not mentioned at all in the report that was attached to today's agenda. We've received verbal confirmation that community gardens should not be affected by the proposed changes. However, without explicit written confirmation that this coverage will continue for all community gardens within the CGN, not just on city stewarded land, but also other public or private lands. And with all the diverse models that we work with, we have to assume the future of community garden insurance coverage is not secure. So because of that, I'd like to reiterate the importance of community gardens and of creating an enabling environment within which to support them. Yes, community gardening is a fun, physical, recreational activity where residents get to grow food for themselves, their family, and friends. The reality is that community gardens provide so much more. Community gardens provide space for growing food that many residents would not otherwise be able to access. Even small plots can be strategically planted to produce high yields that can have a tangible impact on reducing a rising grocery bill while increasing fresh produce consumption. Community gardens are a gathering place where people can actually learn to grow food and teach their kids, families, and neighbors to grow food, to learn from older generations about the best ways to get the biggest harvests, or to learn from younger folks about new technologies in the gardening world. Food literacy is at the heart of every community garden, where community members can learn and practice skills that have even sent them on a path to larger scale food production. These are the critical skills that we need to be developing locally to build resilient communities. They are also critical skills that cannot develop without having access to land to grow and gain that hands-on experience. Community gardens are spaces to build strength among diverse groups of people, to provide the opportunity to connect outdoors, share resources, problem solve, communicate, collaborate. Again, these are critical skills that are needed for building resilient communities. I'd also like to emphasize the connection between many community gardens and their community associations, which continue to play a pivotal role in starting, supporting, and championing the gardens in their communities. Many community associations have also highlighted and prioritized food security needs in their neighborhoods. Just Food has already facilitated and will continue to facilitate more neighborhood level assessments as an important approach to dealing with community food security. All community associations need foundational support like the CPIP to engage in this type of critical work. As community developers, as city staff, and as city councilors, we are all working to establish these types of opportunities that support residents to strengthen our city. We rely on volunteer community members to take part in the programs and services that we all work so hard to set up and make available. Residents deserve to participate safely and securely. Continuing to include community gardens and community initiatives like community associations and community arenas in a free, fully funded city-managed insurance program is critical for ensuring this safe and secure participation. It is also critical to ensure this does not become something that competes with already meager funding envelopes at community funding or civic events funding. And we ask that if there is a problem with finding adequate insurance described in this motion, that the 9th point be removed from this motion, and that instead council direct a report be brought back to city and the public for consultation and further consideration. We also ask that councillors ensure that community gardens is explicitly written as included within CPIP coverage for any direction forward that comes out of today's meeting, if it is not newly included in the city's integrated insurance program, as we have not to this date been able to determine from staff where it lies. We thank Councillor Kitts for seeking clarification on this within her motion and ask that this be clarified in order to ensure long-term clarity on inclusion of community garden coverage. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Carr?
Thank you, Kate. I just have a quick question for Vice Chair Kitts. You included community gardens when you presented the verbal, right?
Yes, there was an earlier version that was circulated that did not include it, which people may have seen and shared, but what I read out and what was on the screen in the third whereas did say maintain and supervise outdoor ranks, community gardens, and or support the operation and delivery, et cetera, et cetera. So they are included there.
So I think it will be in the final copy then that gets approved. But just a quick question, actually, Vice Chair Kitts, on that, or maybe I'll ask staff because it's a bit outside the delegation. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carr, and thank you for the delegation. Those are all the delegations for this issue. I'll note the 2 written submissions that we've received. So I'll open it up now to questions and discussion on the matter itself and on the motion from Vice Chair Kitts. Okay, Councillor Curry.
All right, I just need a couple of clarifications, and this first question is really just in case the community is watching this later on, but David White mentioned director and officers insurance, and definitely that's something at our community associations we've talked about. But I just want to further comment, because we've just had this conversation, but I want to just repeat this from David White. Is it really necessary for community associations to also have director and officers insurance? Because this is general liability, but community associations, and they are different in their sophistication, right, to the last delegation or second last delegation. Some have more significant budgets and some have, $400 in their accounts at times. So just a general comment on director and officers insurance, please, from Mr. White.
Chair, appreciating that, of course, that I can't offer legal advice outside the confines of my relationship with the city. In terms of directors and officers liability insurance, I think it needs to be understood that it is intended to apply to the actions of directors and officers as directors and officers. It's not an extension of general liability insurance. And so it's generally there, and it can be required for large charitable organizations. It's generally there to ensure against issues of financial or fiscal mismanagement and things like that. So it can, just based on my understanding of the community associations that tend to be out there, the nature of their activities are such that they're not in the business of handling the millions of dollars that large charitable groups, United Way, those kinds of organizations, where I would expect to see required directors and officers liability insurance. So I think there's kind of a misunderstanding that it's an extension of commercial general liability.
That is super helpful. I think that's the case. And I think some of the community associations have been buying directors and officers insurance and have not needed it. So I think that will have to be clear. This will do it probably for almost all of them. The other comment I want to make is, and I just numbered them myself, but in these sections of this motion, the part that refers to 2025 budget and adding a position in, which is really whereas clause number 5, I think is the key to this entire motion. Honestly, I think that the good that comes from community associations we already have recognized, but with a person at the city that could help them coordinate and give them information for every type of project they want to run, the exponential growth of their impact on communities will be seen. The kinds of questions community associations have where they're looking here, there, and everywhere for help could all be funneled to one person, and the types of projects that they run could be then kept as examples for other community associations if there was someone at the city who could do this work. And those are just a couple of ideas. I mean, I have about 50 other ideas of what this person could do. So I just think this is a very, very important part of this motion. Because yes, we get them all set up so they have their insurance, but then to have a resource at the city for their projects, and then they can share that, I think is the key to this motion. So anyway, I'll be supporting it wholeheartedly. I sent it out to my community associations as soon as it became available from Melinda, and got positive feedback, a couple of questions that I think we've had answered today, but I think overall people are very pleased with this whole process. So thank you very much to everyone involved.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Gower?
Thank you, Chair. The current program costs $234,000 annually. If we expand this to more community associations, do staff have an estimate of what we might expect as a cost for 2025?
Chair, at this point, without having been through an application cycle, I would suggest, and there's still some preliminary work to be done to identify, for example, how many neighborhoods there are in the city of Ottawa. I know that there's been reference to the Ottawa Neighborhood Study, but it is something of a blunt instrument in that way, in that it doesn't necessarily represent what I think the community and members understand to be the various neighborhoods. So appreciating that there will be some groups that are added to the program, there will be some that no longer qualify, at least in this component of the program. I think I would suggest it's premature at this point anyway to have a fixed number, to have a sense of just how many there will be, because there may be some that have insurance through an umbrella organization or otherwise. And the other component of that, of course, is going to be just what the insurance market looks like at the time of either the next renewal or the one after that, in terms of what those costs might be.
Would it be safe to estimate it's probably in the hundreds of thousands of dollars additional and not millions of dollars?
I think that's a fair assumption, in probably more in the tens rather than the hundreds.
Okay, well, that gives me more comfort here. And of course, we'll be able to see that amount when we deliberate the budget for 2025. So if all of a sudden there's a larger than expected increase, we could make other decisions or choices. So that's good. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning. First of all, thank you to Councillor Kitts and Johnson and everyone who's contributed to a much better motion before us. And thanks to the community. This is a grassroots issue that many community associations led, the FCA in particular. And there's a legitimate concern here. Insurance costs have skyrocketed, and it became unaffordable for community associations to offer community events. And I think we all agree that what community associations contribute to our respective wards and across the city is very, very important. And if this passes, we'll actually see more events be hosted, because they've already been compromised to date. When people know they're covered with insurance, they will feel a little more comfortable in offering those events. So I see this as very positive. I have a few questions about the actual motion. The requirement to produce annual financial statements. First of all, I agree there should be criteria. I agree that overall the criteria are fair. There were some criteria in a past motion I had concerns about the number of meetings, a minimum requirement. That's not there, so thank you. But on the issue of producing annual financial statements, I'm not sure if staff or the mover can just expand on this requirement if they can at this time.
Chair, to the extent possible, my read of the motion is that it largely intended to replicate the same kinds of criteria that the city would impose in the context of other types of community funding. And so, for example, the requirement of financial statements is kind of one of those expectations of good governance and openness and transparency for the community that they represent. And so, from my standpoint, that's the way I read that.
I can just add too that it's normal practice at an AGM to produce financial statements. So that's also a requirement. So they kind of go part and parcel.
Fair enough, okay. The third last, therefore, statement talks about staffing requirements, and can staff just expand on what they envision the staffing requirements would be? I really don't want this to be complicated or a staff burden on staffing. One thing we haven't mentioned when I heard Mr. White talk about referring to the neighborhood study is you can also ask councillors, hey, how many community associations do you have in your ward? I know the number in River Ward, it's consistently been 6, and it would not require consulting the ONS. So could staff just talk about the staffing complement that would be required should this motion pass?
Mr. Mayor, that provision is in there. As we consulted with the groups as part of this exercise, it did become evident that connection between community groups and the city, that there are some gaps in terms of groups being supported in some of the activities they undertake, having access to the right channel within the city. So those kinds of things. In the past, my department and other departments have had what have traditionally been called community developers that would work with community associations. In my department, it happened to be geographic, where we'd have a south, a central, an east. And there was reference made to those supports, I believe in a discussion with Councillor Kitts. We recalled that at one time, some of the associations that had questions along this line would go to their community developer, who would either give them the answer, help them with some of their governance issues that they needed to work through. And so the thought there, as we're looking at a transition over, working with associations on their specific needs, there will be an initial upfront requirement to actually implement the changes that we're talking about in 2025, assuming that all the pieces fall into place. But I think we're also recognize that there's probably as well an ongoing requirement to support these types of groups for a whole variety of things, obtaining park permits, fire permits, understanding the grants that are available to them. So the work that we're planning to do before the 2025 budget is to scope that out in terms of what the actual requirement might be, and to put before council what I think will be a modest request, but a request for resources to help support this work.
Okay, I really appreciate that answer and that background. Thank you. Finally, my last question is, and I don't think this applies to any group in River Ward, but will the city accept on a case-by-case basis a review from a group that does not meet the criteria but could very well, upon further review, be covered off by insurance? So is it a hard and fast rule, thou shalt meet these stated criteria to be funded, or will staff accept that on the rare chance that someone doesn't meet criteria but performs all the same type of community functions with community benefit, you would at least take some time to review their case?
Mr. Mayor, I think the criteria that's laid out today is meant to deal with the groups that are on the list now, but I think also allows some latitude. The department on an ongoing basis has discussions with groups about the services they offer, and discusses the possibility of either a funding agreement that would bring the group into a service provided by the city, or a non-funded, we've heard examples today of groups that manage buildings or groups that provide key access to some of our facilities. There is still opportunity to get into those relationships with groups, and as we do, including them either as part of this package or as part of the same benefits that RINC or community gardens operators benefit from. Not a full package of insurance, but certainly indemnity for the services that they are providing for the city, on city property, those kinds of things. So there is an opportunity to grow in that direction.
Okay, thank you. And just wanted to say I will be supporting this long-awaited but much appreciated motion before us now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard?
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I just want to say this has gotten to such a better place. My communities were really concerned when it first came out, and I was getting emails about it. So I just want to thank Councillor Johnson and Councillor Kitts for your leadership on this. You've really taken the reins for council on this, and it's been improved so much as a result. And of course, the FCA's advocacy and staff's willingness to work together with council and the FCA. I wanted to ask a quick question about therefore be it resolved that in the event that staff are unable to procure the insurance necessary to support the program, clause in there that the funding be directed to CPIP. I'm just wondering, how likely do you think it is that you're able to procure the insurance necessary? I assume you've had conversations already in that regard. Do you think this is going to be an ongoing problem in procuring the insurance in the future?
Chair, I think our discussions for the next renewal have been quite positive. So I anticipate that we will be able to procure insurance. It is very difficult, just given the evolution of the market that we've seen over the last few years. Another factor would be the city's loss history. You know, if in an expanded program there are a significant number of claims, that tends to kind of put a chill in the market, so to speak. But I think for the foreseeable future anyway, I think we can anticipate having the program in place where the city would procure it.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful and reassuring. Community associations, I think, are best assets in the city. Those members volunteer their time. They work for free for the city, and we need to support them because they create better communities all through our wards. So thanks so much again to Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kitts, and others who contribute to this. Appreciate your work and happy to support this today.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess two questions. You heard Ms. Bankier speak about the uncertainty that's out there with respect to those operations of the community association that don't fall within rink operation or fieldhouse booking. What can you tell Ms. Bankier about how this motion, if it passes and the program evolves, how would those non-city, non-rink operations be insured under this new under the program?
Chair, I think they need to be kind of seen as separate categories. So whichever, quite frankly, if they meet the eligibility criteria that have been described in the motion, then they would be qualifying regardless of whether they might also have an agreement for the fieldhouse facility or some other kind of agreement with RCFS. So it would essentially would be that the greatest protection if they meet that eligibility. It wouldn't exclude them, for example, if they also have a rink maintenance agreement or a facility maintenance agreement or something like that.
Okay, and mechanically, what do you expect would need to happen? Is that an application process? Are they going to need to know that, oh, it's time to ask for that insurance?
I mean, in terms of, Dan, my group and Dan's group will work on that. But I think the desire would be not to impose, a particularly high administrative burden. So I think there will be a requirement that they demonstrate that they meet those eligibility criteria. But beyond that, perhaps, and again, this will probably follow on the timing of the renewal. If we can secure insurance for longer than a single year at a time, then it might just be, if it's 2 years, then that application might need to be kind of revisited if need be, either if there's a change in circumstances or if there's a change in the insurance provider, for example, that requires kind of a refreshment of that information.
Okay. The second question is with respect to the point that Mr. Cullen raised around the second to last, be it resolved, and the path forward should we not be able to secure insurance on an ongoing basis. I think what I'm hearing is that staff have made up their mind, the motion would move us in the direction of just implementing a new separate fund to pay for insurance. I think what Mr. Cullen is looking for is the opportunity to weigh in with additional options. If we are unable to procure insurance, certainly the decision to move into a new pot that would fund that insurance makes a lot of sense to me. What other kinds of options might be out there?
Chair, the number of options would be quite limited in that way. Appreciating that this, I mean, this is something we would have to look at from even an authority standpoint as to whether the city could essentially act as an insurer in that way, because there are limitations in the Municipal Act. I think that provision is in there to ensure that staff have the ability to move quickly, appreciating that we don't tend to get a lot of advance notice from insurers and our broker if they're not going to renew. And things can change quite quickly. And so it is more than anything, it's a fail-safe. Not that would preclude a revisiting of that someday in the future in the event that there was some alternate kind of program that might be viable at that point. But in essence, it operates, from my standpoint anyway, it operates to at least protect groups in that event.
I think pre-authorizing staff to pursue that path in the event of the failure to be able to renew the existing program makes a lot of sense to me. It doesn't preclude a city councillor from coming and bringing something to council to say the program needs to be changed, the community's not happy with the funded pot, let's look at something different. But in the absence of that motion, moving in and giving staff the authority to move quickly into something that's been pre-authorized, I think is prudent. Sorry, Mayor, I lied. There was the third category of question, which is the community gardens. What we heard from the community gardens, they're concerned that they may not be covered or that we're not covering them. What is the staff response to that?
Chair, I think the city's position on that, at least from the staff standpoint, has been that the city would be kind of keeping the community gardens in the same bucket, for want of a better term, as the community rinks. The community gardens were added to the CPIP by council in a 2004 decision. That said, I understand that there is a staff review coming with respect to community gardens, and that would also potentially inform how that coverage applies or how it's provided.
So it's not uncovered by absence in this particular set of recommendations or the amending motion? Okay.
Correct. And certainly if the motion is approved as is, there is that, there essentially is a phase-in any event that they would be covered through the next renewal for 2024 to 2025.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you very much to Lane and Catherine for your great work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Carr?
Thank you very much, Chair, Mr. Mayor. I'll reiterate my thanks to Councillor Kitts, but having the opportunity to share a wall with her in the office, I know that Heather in her office worked extremely hard on this motion, so I just wanted to acknowledge that. As a former community association president for many years, I can certainly attest to the fact of how valuable the insurance provision is, not just in terms of providing social events, but I know in my community associations that we have put hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of hours into removing invasive plants. So, dog strangling vine, buckthorn, garlic mustard, and certainly we don't have the staffing within our forestry group to be undertaking that sort of work. They've replanted it with many, many pollinator gardens, so very much in line with our city goals. Also, I was able to, we started a farmer's market using the community association insurance. Centretown did the same thing, so certainly when we're looking towards having a 15-minute community, I think we can rely heavily on, our volunteers provide so many hours into meeting our city objectives. So my first question is, with what's been laid out in terms of what our requirements are for this insurance, just a question to Mr. Cullen's point. Some of the things that he was asking about, are those not already required under the new community association under ONCA to provide those? Like, for example, AGM financial statements, is that not a requirement under the new ONCA legislation that the Cs have to report to?
I confess, Chair, I do not know the answer to that question, but that's something that we can kind of review. As I say, the criteria that exist there really reflect kind of the standard expectations around governance for these types of organizations.
Okay, thanks. I think it might be in there, but so just with, one of the requirements is through an AGM, when community associations have an AGM, they do annual reporting on their activities. Is it at all possible that with the new staff person that there can be a way of tracking some of these activities? Like the scope of them are just so large. And I know a lot of the conversation earlier when we were considering this insurance program, there was always the point that no other municipality pays for insurance. But if there was a way to quantify the hours that are actually being put into these initiatives, I'm wondering if that could be a consideration. I know there's lots of considerations what that staff person can do, but I don't know if you want to respond to that or if it's just me generally making a comment again.
Chair, the general scope of what you're talking about is exactly what we intend to do, and then that's the work that between now and budget time we will scope out so that there's a good understanding of what resources we need and what that resource is going to give. But tracking and checking in on the groups that are under this program is very much part of this in order to support them, but also in order to receive information and hopefully start to be able to provide data in terms of the return to community, the level of effort that's being put out, all of those things that currently we do for some programs, but not for the general geographic community association work that goes on. And as we all know, that is significant in terms of delivery to community.
Excellent, thanks. So would this position also be able to collapse some of the resources that are currently available? As an example, if I want to start a community association, I have to go to the Crime Prevention Ottawa page, which I don't believe Crime Prevention Ottawa even exists anymore. That gives you the outline of how to start a community association and then there's pages within where community associations, where there's a whole list of them, very, very, very out of date in many cases. I know that's the responsibility of community associations. And then through planning, we have the opportunity to register for planning applications. So it seems to me, in fact, that we're going to have all these registration requirements, that there's an opportunity to sort of, I know this position is going to be really busy, and I can already sense a budget ask for 2 people next year as opposed to 1, but I just wondered if that's been contemplated at all.
Chair, yes. In fact, a lot of the things that you're listing used to exist as a centralized point of service. How many of those we can bring back initially, I think there will be a bump in the workload just to onboard and sort the insurance piece of this out. But medium term, I think we can add to that portfolio of services the whole gamut of things that speak to governance, to channels into the city, best contacts, those kinds of things. All of the things that we know groups are struggling with currently because there's so many doors into the.
I didn't mention park permits, Dan, but thank you. And then just my last question with respect to community gardens, which Councillor Leeper just asked a question on. Councillor Kitts and I had put together a motion earlier on that whole community garden review, and we just met with Clara recently, and I know that is going to be a little bit later than expected because it's so comprehensive. So if there had to be a change to that at the time, that can be contemplated at the time of that report, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Kitts for your leadership on this issue. I don't have the exact date when it first crossed my desk when I was elected, but it certainly wasn't too long before I was hearing that this was an ongoing concern. And just to peel back, to like peek behind the curtain of this a little bit and to sort of articulate how encouraged I am by the progress we've made since November. For the clause that's being discussed at the table where we're talking about the staffing requirements, when the motion was first written within Councillor Kitts' office, it was really just narrow to, the administration of the CPIP program. And then I took a crack at it and I made it just a little bit more general so that we could start being curious about these other ways that this staff complement could support community associations. And then it went to Wendy Stephenson and she broadened the language even further to make sure that it really could cover off many of the concerns that staff have been hearing about over the last 3-4 months. So I offer this because I think we don't see that happen all the time. Often we do need to be the leaders to take the pen and to perhaps move a vote. But on this issue, even though perhaps the first 2 years of deliberations were 2 years too long, when council gave the direction to staff in November to defer that report that Councillor Dudas moved at this committee, I believe the progress between then and now has been significantly different. And I want to bring this up because I want to encourage us all to pursue this between now and 2025. We all have stories, you know, when Councillor Brockington is describing, you know, what we don't want this to be a burden on staff. That's no doubt true, but also how much of our time within our office is spent trying to support new citizen participation, and how much, you know, work do we do to try and point people to the right places. I think we all would be creating some efficiencies across the board if we had the investment up front from city staff. And my impression between November and now is that the city manager has demonstrated that commitment through the work of this motion. And so, you know, I just wanted to offer that. We are seeing, you know, perhaps a greater curiosity about risk. I want to offer that in terms of this committee as well. Finance and Corporate Services Committee looks at a lot of issues of risk. And here we have a motion that is asking for us to take more risks when it comes to supporting community groups, to absorb more risks. And the City of Ottawa has not traditionally been known to do that. And so I really appreciate the investment of all the city councillors to defer this report to this meeting so we could go back and get a better result. And I anticipate that if we continue to articulate our commitment to community participation and leadership and absorbing risk from the City of Ottawa to support those community leaders, I think we are getting traction here. So I'm really encouraged by your leadership, Councillor Kitts, and I'll look forward to working with you again on these matters within the corporation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Kavanagh?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's been a productive conversation, and the motion is a good start. Thank you very much to Councillor Kitts and Johnson, and to all who have been working on it, including FCA members. It is something that's absolutely essential because we talk about being a livable city, and it starts in our neighborhoods, in our communities. I was counting up, and I have 14 community associations that are registered community associations. I go to a lot of winter carnivals. 8 of them have rinks. So it's busy. That's not including the winter trails, which is a whole other beast of its own. It's not part of this, and had to get their own insurance. So I have to remind you of that. And that's because of their blend with the NCC, et cetera. So just a reminder. But those are what makes us a great city. And the investment that we're making, insurance costs are going up. Insurance is a fact of life, but it's absolutely essential, and to make us great. And that's where it starts. It grows our city and makes us livable and makes people want to live here. So I just want to give a shout out that we keep it strong. We don't overlook, and the investment is in terms of the growth. I was counting up. I could potentially have 4 more community associations, and we're talking about an inner and outer ward that has that's established. Other community associations are still forming. Most of them form around parks, and so that's what makes our parks so important. I'm glad to hear that the gardens are included. I was concerned, and I'm glad that was clarified. That was obviously just slight oversight, but I'm glad that that is now rectified, and those are also partners. So I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to point out those concerns, and as you heard from the delegations, this is absolutely necessary and appreciated, and we'll keep our community strong, so we can't let go of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Devine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, colleagues. I'll start off by apologizing for following up some such lovely wrapping up framing statements with something quite pedantic and procedural. Sorry. So I'm very, very happy with all the work that's been done here. Thank you very, very much to my colleagues Kitts and Johnson. As a former community association president myself, I can only tell you just how welcome it is to have this support. So my questions are really quite small, and forgive me if this was done during the presentation. My first question, I'm following up on a conversation I had with Mr. White. In the first, therefore, be it resolved, where it refers to the definition of neighborhoods be informed by the Ottawa Neighborhood Study. So I took a peek at the map that is linked to the Ottawa Neighborhood Study. And within just one particular segment of that map in Ward 9, I know that within that segment, I have 4 community associations within that segment. So I just want, just for the sake of clarity, does that language preclude the fact that multiple eligible community associations within a segment of the ONS, would they still be eligible for this funding? I'm sure they would, but I just want to make sure.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I made the comment earlier that the Ottawa Neighborhood Study, it's something of a blunt instrument in this regard, and so that's why it's kind of one piece of the puzzle, appreciating that there will be, in some instances, multiple kind of neighborhoods that might be within the bounds of what the ONS identifies as kind of a neighborhood for their purposes. And that's why it's simply, it might be a starting point, but it'll also require input from community associations, potentially even input from members of council, so we understand kind of the full map of all of those kind of neighborhoods that exist throughout the city of Ottawa. So in quicker answer to your question, yes, it would contemplate more than one per area within the ONS.
Great, thank you. And then my second question, with regards to the eligibility, the various points of eligibility for a neighborhood community association, may I assume that whatever staff is monitoring this program, this will be, there will be some dynamics to this. There will be community associations that fall out of eligibility, just as there will be community associations that come into eligibility. I can think of at least one community association in my ward that meets all of those criteria, but as they were only recently formally turned into a nonprofit, they may currently only have 1 year under their belt. So they may, within a year or so, assuming this carries forward, become eligible. Will this system, assuming there is funding for it in multiple years and insurance for it in multiple years, will we be able to nimbly bring new eligible members in? And should we have to, let's say somebody doesn't meet these criteria and they are no longer eligible, will we have a process for notifying them, hopefully ahead of time, that they may be falling out of standing?
Yes, Mayor. I think from my read of this, part of the idea is to get away from kind of the strictures that we've had since 2001 and to allow that more dynamic in membership as groups are created over time. And as you say, as they may fall out, the specifics of that, we're probably not at the stage yet, but I think those would be all things that we would want to build into that process, probably around renewal time, and as you say, with notice.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor DeRuse.
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, I have a comment. I've been working behind the scene and asking lots of questions, and my community has been participating, but I'm a councillor who has 10 community association, 8 ring, many community garden, and it was very important topic in my community. But I also, if you look at around the table today, we're all as councillor, we enjoy those community association. We appreciate the work that the volunteer does, from a winter carnival to the ring to too many other things. And yourself, Mr. Mayor, you visited most of these events that happen across our community. So that was a very, very important topic to the community. There is some, and it's a complex. So I have some community association, they were grandfathers, some of them, they were incorporated after 2016. So if you really, one of the delegation mentioned something and said, and her presentation, she said, every community association, small or large, they do different business. And this is a very true, because not every community association run the same. They're all volunteer. It depends on the capacity. It depends on the village, how small, how large, location, and what their interests. So by me saying all that, I want to thank my community association that participate heavily in this debate, and also my colleague that they've been taking very hard interest and looking to fixing this issue. So I want to thank Councillor Kitt and Councillor Johnson and all of you for taking this issue very seriously. I understand how challenging and complex this. I want to thank our staff, Mr. White, and of course, Mr. Chenier and staff for working very hard and diligently to making sure we're not going to be able to satisfy. Yes, we're going to miss something, but overall, option one and what presented today to us by the motion, I think we'll all be able to live, and I'm sure we'll have some tweak later in the future, but I want to thank the effort and thank our communities for participating and thank the volunteer for making our community beautiful and our events very helpful in our community. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Derouz. Councillor Luloff.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Il est très important que nous reconnaissions le travail incroyable que font nos associations communautaires. Avec la croissance de la ville, de plus en plus d'associations communautaires voient le jour, d'où l'importance de s'attaquer à un système à deux vitesses. Je pense que nous avons fait du bon travail dans ce domaine. Il est difficile de trouver le bon équilibre et les conversations que nous avons eues ces 2 dernières années à ce sujet ont été difficiles. It isn't just about rinks, associations, and gardens. This policy gives confidence to groups like Friends of Petrie Island, who do incredible conservation and education work in our gem here in the East End, and even Ski Heritage East. This is one really important way that we can show our appreciation for the good work that they do. So thank you very much to Councillor Johnson and Councillor Kitts for taking this work on, as well also Councillor Dudas, who I know chairs the committee that's responsible for this. I know that everyone at this table has been engaged on this. It is so wonderful to see such a great group of people coming together to work hard for their community, to come up with a compromise that, while imperfect, will ensure that we achieve the best possible results with the policies that we have at our disposal. So thanks again, Mr. White, and everyone involved in getting us to this point. It's been a long road. It's not perfect, but it is certainly the best that we could come up with, given the circumstances. Alors, merci tout le monde.
Merci, Conseiller Luloff. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to say, I've watched over many years, and obviously with amalgamation, things change, and we're wrestling again with an amalgamation issue that was kicked down the road, so we could actually take credit for repairing problems of the past that continue to percolate over 25 years later. So thank you for that. And I do remember the day, yes, I'm aging myself along with the glasses and gray hair now, the Shea stage. We had the Shea stage. We always used to offer volunteer opportunities and do things like that. Of course, costs and insurance neutered those situations, unfortunately. Picnic tables and waste bins, other things that we used to provide to really spur on community efforts. And I think since we've seen COVID, people want to get together back again. They want to see each other face to face. Having a turnkey solution, when I got in office, and before that, I was actually the Beacon Hill North Community Association president. I was kind of blind and trying to how to figure things out a few years prior to me getting elected. It was a real wrestling match, and I know Laura and many others, and most definitely when I got in office, we keep talking about Heather Scott here. She's actually a two-capper. She actually is the president of a community association in Pineview. And to have Suzanne Sanford, an amazing staff member within the city, was able to guide. It was able to guide us through the process and making a legitimate community association. We haven't really seen as much of that lately, and I'm hoping a lot of what is happening today is going to lead to that. So again, a big thanks to everyone that's worked on this, Councillor Johnson, Councillor Kitts, and just a reminder, I came in, I repaired the issue, I became the shopping cart king for quite a while, and the patio king, 2 big wrestling match motions. So I don't know if you guys are the festival queens or whatever the case may be, but you got it done. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Okay, so on the motion from Vice Chair Kitts, is that carried?
Carried.
And then on the recommendation as amended, is that carried?
Carried.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's move to item 5.1, the Information Technology Services 2024 Work Plan Update. And I understand there's a presentation on this, so we'll let the team get set up for that. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the committee. So as I committed to in 2023, in the absence of the ITS subcommittee in this new term, we will be coming back to this committee throughout the year with periodic updates. We do have it on the calendar to come back at least 4 times this year, so this is number 1 of ITS update. I'm joined by my colleague here, Sandra, which you all know, and to the far right is Jason Barney. He's the acting CIO. He's part of our the current cohort of our Associate Director program. So between the 3 of us, we're going to share the presentation today. And at the end, we'll be happy to take questions. So I'll pass it over to Sandro. And next slide, please.
Thank you. My name is Sandro Carlucci, CIO. Thank you, Chair and committee members, for allowing me to present an update on our 2024 ITS work plan. As always, I'm so proud of my team and how much they've accomplished over the past few years. Merci aux présidentes et aux membres du comité de me donner l'occasion de faire le point sur le plan de travail de STI de 2024. Je suis toujours fier de mon équipe et tout ce qu'ils ont accompli au cours de cette dernière année. Technology underpins most of the work we do here at the City of Ottawa. The vast majority of resources in ITS is dedicated to ensure seamless delivery of services. La technologie est à la base de la plupart des activités de la ville d'Ottawa. La grande majorité des ressources de STI sont consacrées à assurer une prestation de services sans faille. Our primary focus is keeping the lights on, that everyone comes into work, their computers can turn on, and they can deliver services. We support the organization by ensuring that information technologies are secure, highly available, and perform at their peak for all departments. We provide 24/7 frontline service for day-to-day technologies and infrastructure support. We replace legacy systems with powerful platforms and continue to modernize the IT skills and talent management portfolio. We protect the corporation's technology network, services, and data against harm by way of theft, unauthorized use, disclosure, modification, damage, and/or loss to the city's digital infrastructure. And we also support when there's an emergency and provide technology advisory services. Next slide, please. In consultation with internal clients, ITS develops a client-centric, business-first work plan that aligns with the city's and respective departments' strategic priorities and responds to emerging needs. With our partners and clients, ITS has a lot to be proud of, given what we accomplished as a team in 2023. Avec nos partenaires et nos clients, les STI peuvent être fiers de ce qu'ont accompli en tant d'équipe en 2023. As you can see on the list, this provides some of the key accomplishments that we completed in 2023. All this work helps sustain the organization by providing a consistent, secure, modern, and innovative technology environment while supporting employees and delivering quality services to our residents. And we work with our departments as they look at their priorities from a departmental and a corporate level and understand what's most important for them. We introduced in 2023 something that we call a demand management that allows us to ensure that the right people are working on the right priorities at the right time. And some of the things that we've done is we put in place something called the prioritization calculator. It's a more neutral view of a priority of an item, which uses data points to tell us how critical that request is. We work with the departments to prioritize the work that's most important for them. We're having a main departmental contact who weighs new requests with existing ones to shift the department's priorities. And that role also assesses requests to make sure that they're ready to come to ITS with their resources, their business plan, their budget. And finally, we empower our staff with suites of technology that they can use themselves, like automation tools. And so now, as we go forward to 2024, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jason Barney, that will walk you through our plan for 2024.
Thank you, Sandro, and good morning, Chair. 2024 commitments. So this is a summary of where we're currently at for 24. And keep in mind, we don't do a once-a-year work plan, so this work plan continues to receive intake items as the year progresses. Comme vous voyez, nous avons beaucoup à accomplir cette année. As you can see from this slide, we have a lot to accomplish this year. As of this morning, we have 449 open requests, 184 of which we've committed to, which means we've agreed to assign resources to it. 58 others are planned, which means we haven't assigned resources yet, but we don't want to lose sight of them because they've been identified as priorities. Then we have 207 items in our backlog, which means we have not committed resources to them, but they still need to be reviewed. If these numbers seem high, it's because they are. There is a large demand from the departments for IT projects. And although some of these commitments won't take more than a few weeks to complete, the reality is that some of these will get put to the side in favor of emerging priorities. Many of these requests weren't being tracked before, so this is leading to a more accurate review of the volume of asks coming to IT. We've also listed a number of key initiatives based on the prioritization calculator that Sandro mentioned that we use to assign a ranking. Many of these impact the organization as a whole, and this gives you a good idea of the kind of work that we do, in addition to the lights-on activities. These initiatives include Council Committee AV equipment. This is replacing equipment in the council chambers and Champlain room, providing a more seamless meeting experience for all. Land Management Solution Release 1. This is replacing the outdated technology used for service requests for building code services. New Official Plan Map Services. This new map service will replace the current layer group within the existing planning map service on Geo Ottawa and will be a standalone map service specific to the city's official plan. The Trillium Switch installation. This installation of network switches for Stage 2 expansion, Trillium line. ActiveNet implementation or class replacement. This is stabilizing and enhancing the new activities registration system. Windows 11 upgrades, so upgrading all 11,000 of our computers and laptops from Microsoft Windows 10 to Windows 11. Lag-in replacement 311 Phase 2. This is replacing the Lag-in 311 service request and email functions with a new modernized enterprise platform. 911 infrastructure upgrade. So upgrading our 911 infrastructure to digital IP-based infrastructure, ensuring reliability and enhanced features. Point-of-sale solution replacement to provide a point-of-sale revenue payment management solution to accept and record payments from residents and relay payment information to specific City of Ottawa systems. And SAP modernization, I'll cover this in a later slide. So these are just a few of the more critical initiatives we have underway for 2024. Next slide, please. Strategic priorities. Voici nos priorités stratégiques qui nous aideront à atteindre l'excellence digitale dans l'ensemble de l'entreprise. These are our focus areas that help achieve digital excellence across the corporation, ensuring a consistent, secure, modern, and innovative technology environment. All of our work falls into one of these three categories, and the next slides will touch more on each of these in further detail. Next slide, please. Secure City. Based on the pace of technological change, the complexities of the city's technology environments, and the necessity to support services in a safe and agile way, the need for enhanced cybersecurity measures continues to be a top priority for ITS. The Secure City focus area seeks to proactively manage the ever-changing cybersecurity landscape with an emphasis towards delivering services to residents and staff in a secure manner. La cybersécurité constitue toujours l'une de nos principales priorités pour protéger l'organisation. Cybersecurity continues to be our top priority to protect the organization. We're working on the recommendations that resulted from the 2023 cybersecurity audit, and we're on track with those items. I won't go into the specifics on the key work underway due to the confidential nature of these initiatives, but this focus area makes up a large portion of our project work in 2024. And we'll be providing a more comprehensive update on the cybersecurity audit in camera in the spring. Other key initiatives include enhancing the core security programs, including excuse me, identity and access management, threat and vulnerability management, data loss prevention, as well as security awareness training. Next slide, please. Digital modernization. La domaine d'action modernisation numérique vise à garantir que les technologies utilisées pour fournir les services municipaux est à jour, efficace et répond aux besoins d'une main-d'œuvre en constante évolution. The digital modernization focus area is centered around ensuring that technology used to provide city services is current, effective, and meets the needs of the evolving workforce. This focus area includes projects that ensure the city legacy systems are life-cycled with modern technology platforms that create capacity and enhance the development of the city's business solutions for reliable day-to-day support, reduce cost, and lower risk around software and hardware solutions. We've been working towards making better use of our platform technology, aligning to enterprise capabilities, and reducing our overall operational support. The majority of our projects do fall under this focus area. I mentioned a number of them in a previous slide, but others of interest include public Wi-Fi installation at select community centers, supporting the new Joint Processing Center for automated speed enforcement, as well as further expansion of speed cameras in school zones across the municipality. These initiatives often vary substantially in size and can apply to just one department or the entire organization. Next slide, please. SAP modernization. I also want to highlight the SAP modernization initiative, which falls under our digital modernization focus area. Je voudrais juste prendre un moment pour mettre en lumière l'initiative de modernisation de SAP qui relève de notre priorité de la modernisation numérique. SAP is our enterprise resource planning software, and the purpose of this program is to equip the organization with efficient and effective services, consistent work processes, and high-quality accessible data, all powered by modern technology. This will be done using a coordinated planning process across departments to ensure the highest value modules get addressed first. Next slide, please. Enterprise technology and data. This focus area, adopted to respond to emerging needs of the organization, will allow ITS to outline governance and direction on the proper use of technology across the city, which allows for adequate oversight by the Chief Information Officer. It will continue the work to make select self-service technology more accessible to departments, including foundational automation and data management capabilities. Education on the proper use of technology and data will be paramount to achieving digital excellence. L'éducation au bon usage de la technologie et des données sera primordiale pour atteindre l'excellence digitale. As we move towards some of these new technologies, data has become an integral part of technology initiatives. Access to reliable, accurate, and current data enables city staff to make informed decisions and provide transparency to the organization. One of the big areas we're looking at right now is artificial intelligence, or AI. It's important to understand that the term AI encompasses several fields, including those used at the city, such as machine learning, chatbots, automation, data analytics, even autocorrect and search functionality. AI is even used to help us manage cybersecurity threats. Generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI, tools like ChatGPT, Bard, and Copilot have increased in popularity in the past year with significant investment by big tech in this space. At this time, we are still assessing Gen AI tools along with our partners in legal, privacy, information management, and security for its use within the business to ensure we've addressed concerns such as data ownership, data privacy, accuracy, and data leaks. ITS will be releasing a technology-agnostic responsible use of generative AI guide in Q1 of this year to address the challenges and risks associated with this technology. The focus of this guide is to educate staff on what generative AI is, the risks, the benefits, and the importance of human oversight and decision-making, as well as reinforcing various policies already in place that inform city staff on their personal responsibility as employees of the city. This guide is being developed in consultation with several departments and services at the city. Next slide, please. And in closing, as you can probably see, ITS has had a very busy work plan. Believe it or not, this project work that I covered only accounts for a portion of our time, while the larger majority is considered lights-on work, which is keeping our operations going with things like software and hardware upgrades, help desk and support tickets, system monitoring, and preventative maintenance. ITS continues to take an agile approach to city technology investments, ensuring flexibility and adaptability, and allowing ITS to pivot and prioritize in response to the most current trends and needs within the organization. The core mandate of ITS is to ensure city departments are provided with the tools they need to provide all levels of service to our residents, and ITS will continue to deliver its important services and make improvements to achieve the city's goals. Thank you, and merci.
Thank you for the presentation. Very much appreciated. Councillor Curry.
Thank you very much. When you're creating your priorities for what you're going to look at, is a part of your priority have to do with how much money might be saved?
There's a number of factors that we use when we go through some of the priorities, and each of the departments, we start working with them to kind of look at what is the maximum return on our investment is one of the key items that we use. And so we're working with our departments to look if we can kind of move away from some of those legacy applications, moving more towards reinvesting the technology that we're currently using. So that can help a little bit with regards to some of the savings. And then obviously as part of the criteria that we'll look at is, what is the benefit of doing this particular project? So that is one of the factors that we do use as well.
Okay, great. Because when we had the service working group, we polled councillors, right? There were a lot of councillors, I think, remember Councillor Luloff in particular saying 311 needs to be looked at, right? So when you look at the list of all the things you have here, 311, 911, the Wi-Fi and the rural, can you look at each one of them and say, which is the one that will save us the most money? Or do you know, I know it's hard to be exact, but do you have an estimate to say if we were to change and upgrade 311, that it would save us a particular amount of money? Maybe that's to Cyril, but I'm just wondering if you actually can look at them and say, here's the biggest bang for the buck in order.
Mr. Mayor, so there's a couple of things. There's a lot of non-financial value in doing a lot of these projects. So that certainly comes into play. We do a little test against determined council priorities where it fits in with those priorities. Obviously, 311 is a significant investment that we're planning to undertake this year. We've already started that process. For that one, it's very challenging to quantify because it's hard to put a value on the amount of time that's spent on from each of your councillor's office a request today versus what it will be when we get through this project. So in some cases, it's not necessarily a truly financial return on investment. It's more of a efficiency, capacity improvement value. So it's not necessarily just a dollar value that we have a checkbox to say this one goes because it's our return financially versus this one may have a lesser return financially.
Yeah, and for 311, I can see that. In terms of the councillor's office, definitely people would have, if things are working better, more smoothly, the councillor's office staff would spend less time dealing with 311 issues, but no doubt they would fill up their time doing something else. However, with the 311 department staff, if there was an improved process, would you ever see that then, again, like to my question, the other committee, not to say that we want to cut positions, but that there would be fewer staff needed in that department that could be deployed somewhere else?
Mr. Mayor, yes, agree. Obviously, as we improve processes, technology, where there's capacity gain, that capacity then is reinvested into the organization for other priorities. Or in some cases in 3.1, there could be some preventative planning types things that we can do a little better, where we just don't have time today because we're reacting. So in some cases, the technology will allow us to move to a more offensive planning posture versus continuously to react to things as they come in.
Okay, just one last question, Mr. Mayor. So we just received a report, I think was from the fire chief. Maybe Laura knows exactly what I'm talking about, but the any drug or alcohol call, I think, costs us $1,021. I think that's what the memo said. And I just think, so if we have this 911 improvement, next gen, we talk about at Police Services Board, is there like a follow-up that would go back to the chief to say, okay, we made this change, did this make any difference to then your budget?
Again, Mr. Mayor, we're talking about so small numbers that technically, yes, there should be an improvement in terms of calls. So the call volumes would be your indicator. Will that call volume come down? So then, of course, that's one of the key metrics of this new next-gen 911 is really we should see a reduced response from all EPS-type services going forward. So it's less of a drain. So there becomes less of a pressure each cycle as we try to address the increases in call volumes today.
Okay, Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Leeper?
Thank you very much. Very briefly, I just wonder, we've received a couple of briefings thus far on cybersecurity and camera at this committee. Have we settled into an expected pattern of when we receive those? I would love to be getting those quarterly, but do we actually have a schedule for those at this point?
Mr. Mayor, yes. So we are planning to come back in April with the update on cybersecurity. So every quarter may be a little bit, I don't want to say redundant because a lot of work is being done. So we feel like April is a good time frame because we'll have made some good progress. Then I think we have another plan for June. Or September, sorry. But if we do feel the need to come back sooner, we can. But right now it's April and September on the current calendar.
So twice a year. Okay. Okay, let me noodle that. I don't want to lock.
And Mr. Mayor, we're always open to conversations if you want to reach out to me or whatever the case may be.
Of course. Sorry, second question. The point of sale replacement, what is that? So in our service centers, et cetera, we have point of sale. Are we now going to accept tap or something?
What we currently have was, we have a system that we call GenPay. It was put together predominantly to respond to when COVID happened, where we needed to allow payments to be made that weren't being made at counters. So we have a service already that allows us to do that, but it was done rather quickly. So what we're looking at now is having a more enterprise approach to that point of sale system that allows us to onboard services more quickly without the level of effort that currently needs to happen when we do add another service. So it is just looking to replace that existing system. So if there is another payment that needs to get added, we have that system available to us. And it would be integrated into back-end systems to whatever it needs to end up into.
I have to imagine there are a lot of different options, and we're probably just taking a look at which one is going to cost us kind of the list per transaction or whatever. Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Gower?
Thank you. Not a question, but just a comment or suggestion. One thing I'd love to see in future IT updates is an articulation of how we are improving the experience for residents and other users at the city. Maybe that's, I don't know, someone who might be applying for a building permit or any other stakeholders that might interact. You know, the replacement or upgrade of 311, clearly there's a resident benefit to that they'll see, or the improvements that we've seen to the registrations. But I think residents have a much higher expectation for digital services. They're used to going to an Apple store or using an app to interact with other organizations, and I think they'd like to see government moving in that direction as well. So when we're getting these updates, I would really like to see how the user experience can be or is improving, or where you see that going in future years to help residents access services as efficiently and quickly as possible. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Dudas?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. The first is, when we think of technology, we think it's like agile and fast-paced. But a lot of the programs you just mentioned, LMS, SAP, the transition from CLAS to ActiveNet, I recall those long before I was elected being started. This has been many, many years of work, and we don't want to rush anything. I understand that. But I was just curious in terms of the duration of these projects in general. Do you find that the City of Ottawa is about average in terms of its implementation, or do you find that because maybe we're a little bit more risk averse because of our public front-facing policies, that we're a little slower to get out of the gate with some of these technology pieces?
Mr. Mayor, I'll start and I'll let Sandra and Jason top me up if needed. I'll use the SAP as an example. So the SAP is our core enterprise system that was implemented in the 2002-04 timeframe at amalgamation, which is now 20 plus years later. That journey that we're undertaking right now, we started that journey in 2017 with different modules. That will take us probably out to 2027 because of the sunsetting and the transformation to the cloud from an SAP perspective. What I can tell you is, does that seem long? Yes. but that's exactly what it needs to be. When we look at Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, all the big players that went through this transformative transformation with a big system, that's how long it takes because it impacts different areas of the business. So it's no different than when we look at Dan's recreational facilities. If I do one module in SAP, it will impact my HR system, which then impacts the services that we support from HR perspective. So we got to be very surgical in how we do that, and there's some significant change there. So I appreciate it does seem long, but that's what it takes for these large systems. And LMS is another example in terms of the scope and how we've done that over 3 phases, I think, or 4 phases. Again, it's piece, but it's a process that we got to do in that duration of time.
Thank you. And I appreciate we want to get it right. It's just, the duration feels like quite a long time. My last question is, and maybe it's more of a comment, I understand the mayor has struck a group that involves our partners in the tech sector in Canada North. We have such a wonderful asset in having such great minds operating in our city on our very doorstep. And I'm curious as to whether any of the projects that you have ongoing now, or if you're starting to incorporate that in future procurements of consultants and technology, will include some of those community leaders from the tech sector here in Ottawa.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I can say that through Councillor Curry, myself and Wendy, we met with a team. I think Ralph was there earlier this morning. I'm not sure if he's still here. So we do have dialogues with that skill set and those offerings. Again, we're trying to do more of that in terms of consultation. Obviously, we're bounded by our procurement rules and processes once we get to that stage, but definitely we've already had 3 meetings, I think, so far this year, as we're into the second week of February, with different industry in the iTech sector, just to get a better sense of collaboration, what's going on in the field, if nothing else, just information sharing, because they tend to be obviously ahead of the curve when it comes to technology versus this sector being a little bit, behind the curve, which is natural. So we do leverage that forum where we can and when we can.
I'm glad to hear it, and they live here, right? So they have that kind of grassroots knowledge of our city, that they understand us. So that's wonderful news. I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dudas. Councillor Curry?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. Yeah, certainly thank you, Mr. Mayor, for setting up the mayor's table for technology and innovation. But the one thing I wanted to also thank staff about was what is going to happen at one of the upcoming Tech Tuesdays is Will McDonald is going to go and speak to a lot of the companies in the tech park to basically explain, this is how procurement works. What is, not in a rude way, but basically what is the problem? Is there anything that is prohibiting you from participating in this process? And if there is a complaint that locally we're not engaging enough of our tech sector companies, is there something that needs to be changed or improved? So anyway, I just wanted to thank staff for that openness to come and speak to the companies, and for Will McDonald specifically to come and speak and listen and speak. So yeah, lots to come hopefully, because there's a lot of brain power in that tech park. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Okay, is the report received? Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Thanks again. Item 6.1 is motions and directions recommended for closure. Is that carried? There are no in-camera items. I'll note the information previously distributed. No notices of which motion has previously been given, but there is a notice of motion for consideration at a subsequent meeting. Vice Chair Kitts on behalf of Councillor Lowe.
I haven't read enough motions today, so. Whereas a gateway feature was constructed at the southwest corner of Questway Drive and Prince of Wales Drive as part of a subdivision agreement registered on 17th of January 2002 as OC 35390 and amended by an agreement registered on the 24th of January 2003 as OC 163052 and by an agreement registered on the 22nd of March 2004 as OC 311288. And whereas the gateway feature and the associated parcel of land were not conveyed to the city as part of the subdivision process, and whereas the city completed its report on the design guidelines for new development application gateway features in 2008, and whereas through the design guidelines for new development application gateway features, the city has since developed a maintenance fund to cover all costs associated with the maintenance and upkeep of gateway features for 20 years, with the base amount being $25,500 in 2014 value. And whereas As a result of retaining ownership of the land parcel, the applicant has accrued an outstanding tax balance of approximately $27,000, which would not have been incurred if the gateway feature and parcel was transferred to the city upon completion of construction. And whereas the applicant has agreed to pay the outstanding tax balance and an additional $10,000 contribution to the gateway feature maintenance fund for a total of approximately $37,000, and whereas the applicant has agreed to address all deficiencies outlined by asset management prior to the transfer of the gateway feature and land, and whereas the $10,000 is sufficient for the removal of the feature at the end of its service life, which is in approximately 30 years, and whereas the applicant has agreed to pay the land transfer tax and harmonized sales tax associated with the land transfer, therefore, be it resolved that as a modification of the subdivision approval, council directs staff to assume the gateway feature and its associated parcel, being parts 1 to 3 on Plan 4R20761, for a nominal value of $1 from 1213225 Ontario Limited and Tamarack Development Corporation, subject to the complete payment of all taxes owing, the contribution of $10,000 to the Gateway Feature Maintenance Fund, and addressing all deficiencies outlined by asset management. A new account shall be set up to deposit the $10,000 maintenance contribution.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Kitts. Are there any inquiries? Any other business? Okay, motion to adjourn? Carried. Thank you.